Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's installment of ClueCon Weekly. This week with us, we have Alan Percy, Chief Marketing Officer at TelcoBridges from upstate New York, to give us an update about their latest development in the products and look at what happened the last year and a half and what we will be doing in the next year and a half. Welcome, Alan, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me again. It's always nice to check in to the ClueCon Weekly and give everyone an update.
So, what's been going on in your world?
Sure. Yeah, well, it's been an exciting year. I mean, we'll get into some of the pandemic things happening, but TelcoBridges has been busy, and as of I, as you can imagine, we've had a big shift, right? We haven't been doing trade shows and events and et cetera. Unfortunately, one of the nice things we've been doing is a monthly webinar series on our marketing side, and that has kept us very busy through the last 12 months, which has been great because it gets a chance that we get some new solutions, some new people, some new partnerships, and able to work with people on that. So that's been a big driver, a lot of the activities. One of the other things that was pretty exciting, kind of looking back at the last 12 months, is we're fortunate to be recognized by the UC Today folks as being a finalist for the best security product with our Pro SBC product. And that was obviously an award category that there's some very fierce competition in, and we were very, very pleased to be recognized by those folks, which obviously a very esteemed panel put together the award. So that we started the year with that great news, which was fantastic.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Yes, it was quite exciting. Yep. And we've also had some new customers commit to participate in some case studies, and a few of them are very specifically focused on the open source community. So one of them was with a company called Fusion Networks. They're a New York City-based internet telephony service provider. Their switch is based on Asterisk, and so it came to us with kind of a unique challenge in that they needed to be able to manage their trunks, the wholesale trunks that go off to the operators. And they were struggling with, really, basically it boiled down to, they were struggling with, where do I spend my time? Where does the principals of the company, where do they spend their time? Do they spend their time with trying to build an SBC for themselves, or with some of the open source projects and hiring consultants to do it, or do they spend their time on their product, which is their soft switch, and selling their services to their customers and deploying them? So they came to us basically saying, hey, listen, we really need somebody to come in and just take care of our trunking side of our business. And we helped them implement a set of Pro SBC servers, one in each of their 3 data centers with redundant backup, and that let them, quickly move resources over to application development. And one of the interesting things that they did almost right away is they built their own homegrown robocall protection solution. So they took those resources that had been tied up trying to protect their SIP trunks, and they moved them over to create a homegrown robocall protection platform. And it was really and fraud protection platform. It was really fascinating because those developers quickly came up with an algorithm that detected fraudulent and or robocallers, and then used some metrics, I guess, that they used to identify these callers, to then modify the routing tables in our SBCs with the open APIs to block those calls from ever getting to customers. So it was really, really one of those great stories where they were able to put their resources on something that really mattered to their customers, and they were able to use our Pro SBC to protect their platform and do the routing and give them some resilience and some of those features. So we've got that on our website in a lot more detail in it. There's a video with some of the principles from Fusion Networks. So that was really, for me, it was heartwarming because it was an opportunity for us to really make a difference in someone's business, and especially in the open source space. So it was good fun.
Yeah, so as you know, we've been widening the audience for ClueCon Weekly a bit with the Signal Wire efforts and stuff. So
Yep.
maybe I was thinking we could give just a quick introduction to what TelcoBridges actually does and what's
Sure.
the main product. So what people understand by now that you do SPCs and various type of traffic
Sure.
routing,
Sure. Sure.
etc. But it's probably a good way to spend a couple minutes.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good idea. We probably should have started with that. But yes, anyway, the TelcoBridges, really our main business is connecting communication applications to the outside world. And that is either through TDM networks with our media gateways or signaling gateways, and or with our session border controllers. And those devices, the two gateway signaling and media gateways, typically connect to TDM infrastructure and convert it over to SIP, or vice versa. Take a SIP infrastructure and allow people to use TDM equipment behind it. We see all kinds of interesting applications. And matter of fact, another kind of success story that's interesting is, the service providers in many cases will have a legacy TDM switch with customers who are used to having TDM connections to that. So they might have contact centers, or they might have a PBX, a legacy PBX, and they'll pull out that legacy switch and put a soft switch in. And by the way, free switch we've seen be one of the solutions that's used, a soft switch. But how do you convert from free switch, which is SIP based,
Mhm.
to the TDM infrastructure that the customers have? And an easy way to do that is put a media gateway in with the SIP side facing free switch and the TDM side facing the customer. And that's what we call a network transformation. And that allows the service provider to use free switch, and then the end customer to basically continue to operate without any disruption. They don't have to upgrade their contact center, for example, or upgrade their PBX. That's all handled for them by the gateway. So yeah, connecting networks to the outside world is the primary business that we do. About 35 people based in Montreal. I'm based outside of Buffalo. I manage the marketing. We've got salespeople out in British Columbia, Hong Kong, and Italy, and we've got some support people in Turkey, and of course in the other offices too. So it's a really global company, and most of our market is in North America, but about half of it is scattered around the rest of the globe. Do really well in Europe and in Asia. So a very diverse customer list, to say the least.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I
Yep.
think that's a very good start for the rest of the chat. So I was going back
Yep.
to your discussion about protecting your SIP trunks and in
Sure.
general robocalling, etc. We have a lot of people in the industry right now that are so SignalWire is a CPaaS. People can use SignalWire full
Yep.
stack to do their own infra, but there's a lot of customers who have a hybrid infrastructure or have their own servers, etc., or cannot use a fully cloud product because hospitals, many hotels have systems that still need to be on premise, etc. There's other considerations too, but many people are starting out with that, which is
Yes.
interesting because
Yep.
for a while nobody was doing anything new. Then suddenly everybody is doing SIP left and right. How would you
Yes.
recommend protecting your servers? Because as we all know, I always give this: get one of my Docker images for FreeSwitch, put it online on a cheap VM that's exposed to the internet, and just wait. It
Yes. Oh
takes
yeah.
a minute, couple minutes tops, and you start getting people trying
Yes.
passwords and whatnot. So how
Yep.
do
You
you
got a
protect
SIP
your
vicious attack within minutes. Usually, that's usually what happens. Yeah, you're
I've
right.
seen it in a couple of minutes last time. We were doing
Yep.
some quick
Yep.
testing. It's happened faster in occasions. Probably if you're on a block that's already known to host other PBXs and stuff like that, it's literally seconds. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
how would someone starting out saying, "I want to use SignalWire trunking, I want to use SignalWire cloud services, but I also want
Sure.
my own office to use my own devices, my own hardware, to protect your office so that
Right.
you the stuff doesn't melt after 15 minutes."
I get it. I get it. I hear you. Oh, we hear all these horror stories. I'll use a couple examples and protect their names to protect their innocence. But it's very common for as soon as you put a SIP interface, and of course the problem, one of the beauties of SIP is it has a very standard interface, right? You
Yeah.
know what port number it's probably going to be on. and then finding basically, and it has to be on the open internet if you want to be able to talk to anybody else, and so it's fairly easy to do it. Well, there's a couple things. Well, first of all, there's a layer, and most session border controllers either have an integrated firewall or they work with an external integrated firewall. But the trick is to open and close ports dynamically on the firewall based on the SIP signaling. So the SIP, the signaling might say I need to use a certain UDP or TCP port, and then the SBC needs to intelligently tell the firewall, okay, open that port bidirectionally, or manage the ports. That's the first step, and that helps the first round. The second round then is by whitelist or blacklisting IP addresses, right? And dynamically doing that, saying, gee whiz, it's very strange we're getting so many registration requests from this particular IP address so quickly. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, so let's blacklist it. And that's one of the most powerful tools to protect that scanning. It's essentially dynamically and intelligently detecting scanners and blacklisting the IP address when they're doing that scanning. So that's kind of the second layer of protection. Then the third one, then of course, is the password protection, and then encryption, and the registrar behind it having a list of who's allowed to connect in. So there's kind of layers of protection that happen, and the SBC provides those first 3 or 4. And why do you use an SBC to do that? Why not just have the application do it? Well, because it offloads all that work onto the SBC. So the SBT is kind of like your armor. It takes all the first hit, and some is going to sneak through. I mean, somebody is going to be intelligently sneak through once in a while to get through to the registrar, for example. But the SBC will take the brunt of that attack and protect the application. So that's, in a nutshell, how the SBC protects these kinds of applications, and CPaaS applications particularly would be susceptible to this kind of attack. So it's a great use case to put an SBC in front of a CPaaS platform.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, what about robocalling? Do you think that should be done at the application layer, or are we going to see something change with stir shaking and all the other stuff that's going on?
Yeah, great topic, and we've spent a lot of time on this over the last 12 months. And it kind of goes in 2 ways, right? There's 2 layers to the robocalling problem. One of them is, yes, there's lots of people robocalling. We all get it every day. We know their tactics, and the tactics change every day, it seems like. So the first thing is to deal with a caller ID spoofing. That is a critical failure that allows fraud to occur. That's where people answer the phone thinking it's their bank, or they think it's the IRS, or they think it's a neighbor. It could be as simple as that. So the first thing is to stop the spoofing of the caller ID, the illegal spoofing of the caller ID. Because remember, there is valid legal reasons to do spoofing of caller ID, like reverse 911 calls, and like school closing, your doctor's office calling. Those are all applications that is legal robocalling. So stir shake, and I know many of you have probably been through a lot of the materials, but in a nutshell, it's a mechanism to put a token on the SIP invite that uses an encrypted header that then, when it gets to the destination, it can go back to a certificate library and open that certificate, or open that header, and then say, okay, this is valid. Everything checks, and therefore I can trust that caller ID. But that's all stir shaking does. It just, when it gets to the destination service provider, the terminating service provider, can open that and say, is this valid or not? Much of that work is usually offloaded to to SBCs and or to a cloud service to do both the creation and the validation of those passports, they're called. And that process, why do we do that? We offload it to the cloud because the application would be burdened with some fairly computational work. And it's a lot easier if, when a call arrives, it just has in the P-asserted identity, it just says it's validated. And then you know that the caller IDs can be trusted. So
It's
then the
very
next, yep, go ahead.
I mean, it's very similar, and I like to compare it for people who are not as deep in the technology to how HTTPS works. And
Correct.
there will be someone who effectively becomes the Let's Encrypt of StirShaken. And in an analogy to what you just said, you don't actually, when you write a web app, you don't actually check the certificate for requests. Your web
Right.
server does that for you, and if the certificate doesn't match for some reason, they will get an error. The request will be discarded. So you need to
Correct.
upload that to somewhere else. You cannot expect to write it into your own app because that will be just too much,
Yeah,
and there's no
waste
need
of
for it.
time and a waste of CPU cycles. Yep, yep, both. So yeah, so it's typically that's the architecture that's generally used, is to use an off, to offload it to a authentication service or a validation service, and our SBCs, intermediate gateways, do that. And it was one of the things we added this last year, is the ability of either using a media gateway or an SBC to be able to, when a call comes in, redirect it over to one of the either authentication or validation services, and then based on the response, then you can then route the call. The SBC, because it has a routing engine in it, can then route the call based on the result. So calls that are suspicious can go one direction, calls that are validated can go a different direction. So that's one of the things. But that, like I said, that's the first step, right?
Yeah. What's the
Is
second step?
Yeah, the second step then is, okay, now I can either trust the caller ID, or I know I can't trust it, right? Because
Hmm.
it's not been validated. So now the trick is to analyze that call and compare it against, the millions of others that are out there, and say, is this one either, a known good party, a suspicious party, or a known bad party? Typically, this falls into one of those three categories. And we've been working with a couple organizations who are building these intelligent databases using, millions of endpoints in the telephone network to collect this data. Because to really do a good job at this, you have to have a large data set. It takes machine
Millions.
learning, yes, and literally millions of endpoints with billions of calls that come into this machine learning to learn, okay, who's good and who's bad. And so we were working with a couple of parties. One of them is still under NDA, so can't tell you the name, but that's designed for enterprise solutions. And another one we just announced a couple of weeks ago is with Umail, and this is it's an add-on integration that goes onto our SBCs, and eventually we'll have it for our media gateways too. That will score each call. So as the call comes through the SBC, whether it's been validated through StirShaken or not, we can now turn that information over to the robocall scoring engine,
Hmm.
which uses its machine learning, will look at the number and make a decision about whether is it good, suspicious, or bad, return that result to the SBC, and then the SBC can route the call based on that,
Or two,
saying
whatever.
again, yep, or can adjust the caller ID field, or can do other things with the call, or just pass the information along to the application, and the application can deal with it. But yeah, that is a huge breakthrough, because the FCC has told all the operators is that you have to implement a robocall
Yeah.
mitigation program within your network, and fairly quickly. They've basically lit a fire under everybody with a number of mandated dates. So we've come up with a very quick solution that they can implement within a matter of days to protect against this robocall
That's
scourge that's occurring. So,
So
yep,
I'm curious. You mentioned machine learning, which is one of my, let's say, hobby interests because I
yep,
don't have time
yeah,
for
yeah.
everything. What information is used aside from the FCC complaints against the number to decide
Yep.
if a number could be robocall or not? Just if you know, I mean, if you can tell us some of those, that's
Oh yeah,
interesting in
yeah, yeah.
general.
Matter of fact, we're working on a webinar for March 23rd.
Oh yeah, so I'll put
Yes,
that on
and
on my calendar right away.
yes, yeah, we're working on a webinar, and the CTO from Umail, Mike Rudolph, is going to join us. And in the presentation, he explains some very interesting details of how they do it. And I won't spoil the surprise, but I will tell you that with some of the machine learning tools, they've learned what they call the fingerprint of a call.
Hmm.
And in some cases, it's because a lot of robocalls use pre-recorded voice.
Oh yeah, they do.
And yep, and because they can capture that pre-recorded voice in the Umail voicemail boxes, they can start to match up and say, hey, that's that same fingerprint of the message as the one before and the one before and the one before and the one before, and now they can start to see a pattern to where the
bad
call is
guy
coming from.
stamp.
Yep, and then they can stamp that. They can stamp that origin as being suspicious, and eventually escalate it to as a spammer. So it's very interesting. I encourage people, and he's got some great slides that explains the whole, at a high level how they do it. It's
If I can
essentially in a
make it,
nutshell, that's how he does it.
I wouldn't miss it if I can help, because it sounds like a really
Yep.
interesting. Yeah, one
Yep.
thing I'm expecting to see, even though I'm not sure that. So the frequency of calls from a number is probably going to be some kind of metric too, and that's why I think there should be some kind of unified database, real-time database of that kind of things happening. So clearly, if a number is making 1,000 calls in an hour, either someone who's sitting at home very bored because it's the second month they're home with the COVID lockdown, or it's something is wrong. It's
Well, and remember, that could be a legal robocaller. That's the other problem too, right? I mean, the service provider could set up, even one of your customers easily, for the CPaaS platform. It's a great application to build on a CPaaS, is to build up, let's say, for example, reverse 911 application. And matter of fact, we have another customer who's building a similar kind of, application. It's a notification application for environmental hazards. And you imagine, for example, an oil spill or a nuclear leak or something like that, kind of those kinds of situations where you want to quickly notify people. So you would need to suddenly, quickly make a lot of calls. And the trick is to not have these machine learning engines get tripped up by that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yep. So that those machine learning engines say, aha, it's coming from such and such. That's whitelisted. That's a valid person. And so that's all part of how StirShaken works together with these platforms. If it's that call has been validated because they've got a delegated certificate, let's say, then when it hits the robocall engine needs to say, okay, but it's a validated caller ID. It's not on my blacklist, so let it go. So it all kind of goes hand in hand. It's a complicated puzzle, that's for sure.
I'm even thinking that in the future there might be something like a whitelist type certificate for StirShaken, like some special authority of sorts that just issues certificates for government agencies, reverse 911, the kind of service, so that the filters can reliably let those through, because it's going to be more and more useful since we're growing more distributed. The world is changing, and that's a good lead into. So I've really enjoyed reading your Life After the Pandemic article. You published a year ago, almost a year ago to date. So what will be interesting, I think, is to look at what you predicted and see what you got wrong, which is
it's hysterical because you in our prep talk, right? You said let's pull that up, and I went, oh my gosh, I forgot. I mean, I remember writing it, but I forgot the details that are in it. So we can go through it real quick here. So
it's always interesting to do this kind of stuff. So the first point is web collaboration tools like Zoom, WebEx, Slack, Teams, and other will have tremendous place in businesses processes. I think that's.
I think we can absolutely. And there is, matter of fact, some discussion about how many of these seats will persist beyond the pandemic, and the analysts have spent a lot of ink writing about how much of this is going to last, right? How many team seats will survive the pandemic? How many Zoom seats will survive? And the analysts have been saying, somewhere between 60 and 70%. And most of the degradation they're talking about they think it's education. They think a lot of the education use cases will probably stop after the pandemic, right? That people, when they start to go back to school, they won't need the Zoom seat anymore, and they'll get rid of it.
Schools actually have less money too, so there's that consideration.
That's right. The financial constraints.
If they need to make a choice, right now they don't have one, but if they need to make a choice, it's probably going to be in favor of not using the tools, for sure.
That's correct. Yeah, and I hear that, and I have educators in my family, and it's I would say it's a high probability. So, but no two ways about it. In the corporate world, I think we've so long been using tools like WebEx and Zoom and Teams as a part of everyday use. I think that's become a habit, and it will persist well beyond the pandemic.
I have to say, we've been having very good success with the SignalWire Work platform, which is kind of a
Yep.
virtual office. You can
Yep.
sit in lobby, wait for people. You can see what's around, and it's something that we already know that many of our customers will stay on. Probably all of them, honestly. Most companies will be remote for at least the next year, anyways. So it's
Yes.
which is a different discussion on office space, etc. But
Right.
we'll talk about that another time. Point number 2 says video conferencing will be the new normal, and I think there's a fun one here. We'll learn to use the mute button and camera selection button. I can tell you that hasn't happened.
That's funny. I know. It still amazes me. Here it is, 12 months into the pandemic. I get a Zoom call, and I had somebody crash into one. Like we talked about locking the conference bridge. I had a large group of people on, and somebody jump on with a really noisy TV in the background, and we kept, muting the person. They kept unmuting themselves, and it was like, no, stay muted. You're raising a racket on the conference bridge. So that's.
Yeah.
But I think I think a lot of people have now Zoom skilled, or voice and video conferencing skilled. So and they're aware their videoscape, right? What's it look like in their office, and know how to use those fake backgrounds. So anyway,
my wife is a teacher, and she's doing a lot of remote teaching right now, and she has an analogy with an avalanche. Like, it's like everybody's sitting under a snow avalanche, and you're calling out, can you hear me? Can you see me? I can see you. Which is exactly what's happening here.
That's funny. Yeah, it's a good metaphor. Yep.
Supply chain diversification. I think, we've seen prices go up. Some prices have seen. Well, look at the video cards and microprocessors in general.
Yes. Well, I think it was a real wake up call, especially in the pharmaceutical, right? The absolute necessities. It ranged from what happened with all the toilet paper. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
What was the joke this last week? I thought was a good one. Is that March 2021, just like March 2020, except we have toilet paper. So
I can tell you that's 100% true in Italy, because we have the same measures in place, but we do have toilet paper, which is handy.
Yeah, but I think pharmaceuticals, I think, was a real wake up call, right? Masks, syringes, those kinds of things.
We weren't ready for sure.
We're not ready. Yep.
Number 4, laptops and work from home capabilities with standard. I think you're right here. I haven't seen someone buy a new desktop computer in ages, unless they're a gamer.
Right. Matter of fact, there's a small group of developers within our company who do very computational work, and then have been using a desktop computer. And the first thing we did is we moved that into the cloud, and then set them up with remote desktop capability. And that was instead of that desktop computer being underneath their desk, now it's tucked away in a server room in a new facility. And that's how we solved that problem. But you're right, it's been a long time since I've seen somebody actually buy a desktop computer. So
yeah. New employees will find that work from anywhere is possible from them. Yeah, that's certainly true. We have seen people adapt, but so how is company being managing that? And have you had any issues? Is everybody's happy with it?
Yeah. So in matter of fact, I've got some very close friends, and one of them is including my son. He started a new job with a bank here in Buffalo, doing credit analysis. And has not yet set foot inside the office of the building. He's been working for him for a number of months, almost 4 months now. So virtual work at home people. It's just we figured out after it took us almost a year to do it, right? But we figured out how to hire people and put them to work, and set them up with the tools that need to be productive from remote. And it seems to work, and it'll be interesting to see going forward if that continues, or where does the face-to-face fit in?
SignalWire has been fully remote since day one. We only have a small office in San Francisco. And I've been remote for the good part of 15 years now. But I've seen people adapt. Some of them adapt better. Some of them adapted less well. I think it's par for the course. Yeah, one is funny. Kiss the snow day goodbye. That's right. That's right. Schools, the kids don't get the snow days anymore because teachers are just far out.
No. Although, interesting little story is the City of Buffalo School District this last week got attacked by ransomware, and they had to
Ooh.
use a snow day because the ransomware attack was so bad that it made it so they couldn't even work remotely. The teachers couldn't instruct remotely, so
So
they
it's
had
no
to burn
longer
a
snow
snow.
day; it's hacker day.
It's hacker day,
If-
exactly. Yeah,
you don't
yeah,
get to stay home
yeah,
if it's snowing, but if some script kiddie just decides it's is
yeah,
bored, you might get a
yeah,
day off, kids. Yeah.
yeah.
So go learn security, guys. It's important.
Right, ransomware day. Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
really
actually
sad.
advocating any of this, but
Yep.
So watching many new faces walk past our home every afternoon. Yeah, who are these
Yeah.
people? Yeah, we don't know who the neighbor people are. I'm in Italy, so I generally do, but I can see that happening in the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we live in a neighborhood of a lot of people. The garage door opens, the car comes out, and off they go to work. That's before the pandemic. That was, and we knew obviously the neighbors directly across and next door to us, and maybe a couple of houses down. But there were a lot of people, halfway around the block that we knew their car. Basically, is what we knew. And people have been getting out, doing more exercise, walking their dogs a lot more. And it's been, I think, good for a lot of people's psyches to get out and walk. And a few of us have formed a
For
little
sure,
dog
yeah.
walking group, and we time walking our dogs at the same time every day, and that gives us a chance to kind of communicate with people from a nice social distancing, safe outdoor environment. So it's definitely changed our behavior. Yep.
I have a golden retriever, so it doesn't it doesn't like walking around much. So, but
See, I've got one too, and I've also got a little Bernedoodle, and they expect their. In fact, I think on 4:30 they'll come into my office and start doing the, clawing at me because they
yeah,
want to go for their walk.
of
So
course.
yep, yep,
So people adaptable. Yeah, this is interesting. People
yep,
celebrate birthdays online,
yep.
do neighborhood sing-alongs. I can say I've met some people I hadn't seen for a while. I've been seeing them more since I can do it over video. That's
Yes,
weird. It's
true.
very odd. That's actually true.
Yeah,
I agree
that's
with
true.
this. Nightly ping pong table moved to the living room.
Yes,
Yeah, you
that
gotta.
ping pong table is still in that room. It's been a year. And my wife is an incredible ping pong player, and my son, who has spent some time here, both of my sons who spent some time here during the pandemic, just as a change of pace, have gotten incredibly good at ping pong. I am nothing but a target when I go in and play against them anymore. So
My
yeah, we cleared the room and put the ping pong table there for I think through last spring, and then it came back out again this fall, and it's still there.
and your
And
wife is still
we play
winning,
it
right?
regularly. Yep, she beats me all the time, beats my kids all the time. It's uh,
Can't win them
it's a
all, right?
regular, it's a regular part of our lunchtime experience. Yep.
Yeah, I can tell you we're both my wife is a power lifter and I've been doing wrestling for a long time, and we just train at home, which is silly. We have this small room where we have some mats down and just do things.
Yep.
They're waiting for gyms to open again. I think it's going to be a long way for wrestling and that kind of sport, so
Sure.
might as well. I don't know why people are not allowed to play ping pong. Honestly, you're just fast enough, but whatever.
I know. I know.
Or
Well, at least here in New York State, they opened up. I think so. My wife plays tennis, pickleball, and ping pong. That's why she's so good at it. Anything with a racket,
oh yeah,
she's very good at it. But they opened those up a number of months ago. So she's been playing pickleball and tennis. And again, same thing, right? So you wear a mask until you're on the court, and
yeah.
then you can take once you're on the court, you're safely distanced from everybody else. And so they've been doing that. And yeah, ping pong's good fun. We have a good time with it.
Italy has a very weird set of laws, including the fact that if you go walking through the mountains, you go have a hike, you can.
Yeah.
But if you're hitting a golf ball with a golf club every
Yes.
couple hundred yards, you're a criminal.
Oh, really?
Like do the
Wow.
same thing. You're just walking around. You're allowed to. If you're actually playing golf, that's felony. That's
Huh.
so weird. Like don't
Yeah, that is
don't
odd.
kick or hit anything, and you're good. Last one
Yeah.
is being prepared. Yeah, getting a case of wine and emergency supplies will always be
Yeah.
useful. But in general, I think being prepared for more useful, also more well, wine is very useful, but similarly useful things is
Yes.
has paid
Yeah.
off, like dog food, cat food, even just that. It's been
Yeah.
we keep a reserve. We use not to, we now have a month worth of
Yes. Yes.
that.
Well, I was, when the thing started, I have to admit, we were caught off a little, caught off guard a little bit by, what happens if the grocery store closes? And, fortunately, it never really fully closed. I mean,
Yeah.
there were shortages of things, but the grocery store never closed. But like most people, we could scrape by for a week or so, right, with canned goods and things that are in the freezer and et cetera. Easily, a week or maybe 2 weeks, we could probably scrape by without any troubles. But then after that, then it gets ugly. So
Yeah, that's
yeah, it's
we've been doing being a little bit more careful, having an extra gas for the chainsaw. We do a lot of
sure.
wood chipping around here because heating and stuff. It's
Yep.
yeah. I think if everybody's emerged from this more. I think we will learn something. We hope we
Yes.
don't need it anymore, and I'm looking forward to where I can just open the fridge, find out it's empty, and not care about it, like literally empty.
Yeah.
It
Exactly.
doesn't matter. Kids, we're going out. That's
Yeah.
it, really. So
Yeah.
we'll
Going
be
for dinner.
happy when we can do that again.
That'll be nice. That will be nice.
So it's been a very interesting chat. Thank you, Alan, for joining us.
Yeah,
And
no, it's great to have. Thanks so much for the invitation, Luca. I appreciate it very much. Look forward to the
and
next time.
yeah, and I'm looking forward to your to the webinar, to the machine learning
Sure.
and webinar. So I'll ask you for some details later. And again, thank you very much for joining us, Alan Percy, Chief Marketing Officer at TelcoBridges. And that's it for ClueCon Weekly this week. Thank you very much.